I get that part, like, and it's very similar to my Lemmings experience, but was that the thing that kept it together, or was there like mission or activity, or like was it a pure social group like you're talking about, or were there things that kept it going? I'm curious why it kept going for so long. Is it just a group of friends, or was there an added, like, what made it succeed?
Well, I don't know that I have a good answer for that. Perfectly honest. That we did a lot. We did some stuff, and what we frequently did is more than anything else, take all the family and the kids and go out into the country to a campsite someplace and hang out over the weekend.
Which was amazing.
Yeah. Dustin frequented Otter Creek, yeah.
In fact, last night I was at a party, and there was a young woman there, and named Grace Meakin, who, I first met as a small child at one of these outings. Who's now a flamenco dancer and a teacher. So, it's like, oh, okay. And I was getting basically the same kind of questions from the people that I was hanging out with at the party, who had just moved into town, or who were just being connected up for the first time around dancing. So that's that's how that goes on too. So, I mean, I'm always amazed that they go together and hang out and last.
Yeah. I was my Lemmings, the bar experience. We have a strong friendship and friendship community, and of course we're at a bar, so there can be lots of pontifications or emotions. So it's really fulfilling that way. But I kind of miss earlier in life. I did a lot of the youth group stuff, and so this was, fortunately for me, not evangelical religious. It was more just how do we talk about love and be better people? And so we had a lot of more structured activities along those lines of, like, how do you meditate? How do you reflect? How do you, here's a safe space to go through thoughts in your mind with difficult experiences outside of the group, say at home or at work or with a loved one or something. And so it was a very support group, but it was also, I guess it had a structured component, and we weren't trying to make people love Jesus or anything. We were just trying to, I don't know what we were trying to do, but there was a plan.
And stay together and keep knowing who people are and hanging out with them. But
yeah.
There were a lot of positive things. I'm a latecomer in the group. I guess I don't know how long it's been, Paul. It was in the 90s, I guess, when I joined. But I got involved with the guys at Otter Creek. I got invitation. I'm not sure whether it was from Kyle or Bill initially, but Dustin, you recall some of the trips we made down to Otter. Mm-hmm. I think you guys had a good time. And it was after that I got involved with the group. And the one thing that I note about the group, Paul, you always referred to it as an accidental tribe. I kind of like that phrase. It was, you belong to it somehow, and it's not very well defined. And that bothers me in a way. There are some advantages to it because you don't become, doctrinaire.
Monolithic, yeah.
You don't have to enforce the rules and all that kind of stuff. But the problem is it's very difficult to reach a decision because there are no bylaws. There's no mechanism that is in place to say, okay, what night of the week are we going to meet? Well, we go on for weeks about that. And it's, well, gee, I can't do the blah, blah, blah. And there's no clear-cut means to say we're going to take a vote or we're going to, offer up proposals or whatever, the normal mechanism that you would go through in any other organization, we don't have. So now we're in kind of a, I don't know if it's a crisis, but it's kind of a turning point, I think. And it's something I mentioned early on. We started doing Zoom meetings. I initiated the Zoom meetings, God, it's been a year and a half ago, I guess, because of the pandemic, we couldn't get together. So I started the Zoom meetings. And after we started the Zoom meetings, someone suggested, well, we've got people out of town. Oscar Block is one of the guys. He lives in Wisconsin. So we invited Oscar to join in the Zoom. That was fine. It was good to hear from Oscar. And then Ed Schmidt, who lives in Boston now, these guys were members of the group long ago, but, had moved out of town and had diaspora themselves. So, we started including these guys. And then there were other guys like Ed Ward, who can't get out. He can't drive. He can't move. He's handicapped. And now Brad Castleberry also has a physical difficulty. So now you have these guys who've been attending Zoom meetings, and the pandemic is wound down. We're all vaccinated. So the move is, well, we go back to meet in person. Well, if we go back to meet in person, then these other guys can't be part of the meeting. So, all right, how do we come to a decision? That's where they are right now, trying to decide how are we going to reconcile these two things. And one time we tried meeting at a restaurant and bringing a computer so that we could turn it on and have the Zoom meeting. Well, there were about half the guys who were in town who were on the Zoom meeting, that half of us who were there, we couldn't hear each other, we couldn't talk to each other. It was just a mess. It didn't work. So I don't know how you resolve this. I mean, the natural thing is to have two separate kinds of meetings, I think one of the problems, Paul, is we try to meet too often. Ought to meet once a month. I belong to another group that meets once a month. It's much easier to handle. You can prepare it, and people look forward to coming to it and make the time for it.
It's making me think of, and there's a natural thing, I know I do it, and I think both of you do it too, is there's this line between the organized and the messy, right? And, coming up with a tool that works and that kind of thing. And this is a beautiful thing, and of having a structure and a purpose and a plan. And this is I feel comfortable in it, right? So that's why we have a structure. That's why I do it and why it attracts people. And then but I also know, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Everything is messy. Some things change, which means you just can't keep on. You can't hold on to the old thing because just the thing has changed. And embracing both plan and chaos, kind of thing. I find that, I don't know, I really have a point. I just find that exciting to do both. There was this, the data structure man in me is this way. And then I keep bringing up some of the political figures like Tulsi Gabbard and stuff well, how do you actually live with someone you disagree with? How do you honor that person? Don't try to figure it out. This was the other thing of you know what? There's my answer, but there's no the answer. And I never want the answer, by the way. That would mean we're done. Let's pack it in. If we figure it all out, then all right, let's see you at the end of the world party.
Yeah, that interaction, that yin and yang, I guess, of structure versus non-structure, I don't know how you refer to it, but it's almost as though the conservative part of me wants to enforce the rules, and the liberal part of me wants to rebel against the rules. Liberals want something to be against, and conservatives want to hold on to the status quo. We go back and forth. I thought it was funny. At one time, I was attending the men's group meeting on Wednesday, and then I went to a church meeting on Saturday when I was still working with Holy Trinity Church. And I was the conservative, apparently, in the men's group, whereas I was the wild liberal in the church group. Same guy, same, discussion. Yeah. But
same room, different lighting.
Right. So, my frustration, as I said, over the years has been, when we were organizing the Otter Creek outings, it's as though each time we did it, we had to reinvent the world. And my point was, look, you lay down some procedures so everybody knows what to do, and then you divvy up the tasks and we get it done. It doesn't require a lot of effort. You just do the thing. Well, no, we couldn't do that. And we couldn't, if we had money left over, like we'd charge, it wasn't much, $5 for the weekend for somebody. Well, if we paid off the expenses and we had $100 left over, my strategy was, well, you take that and you save that for next year and you make that the deposit on next year. That makes sense. Oh, no, we can't have that money around. So it was like you don't want to have structure. You're bothered by that structure. You want it to be loose and freewheeling, but then you want structure. you want it to be there so you can react to it, And Paul, I think that's what you were indicating. One of the guys was saying, I don't want to come into a meeting where I've only got so many minutes to talk and I'm supposed to say certain things. They want it more freewheeling. Problem is, the individual you pointed out there who was making that suggestion talked for 25 minutes in a row one meeting. I put a timer on it. He wouldn't shut up. So, that's a real battle. Structure and I don't call it freedom, but lack of structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the hope. Yeah. I'm trying to come up with a catchphrase. I'm still working on it. It's been 40 years. Have high hopes and low expectations. Like I always joke about one of my catch banner phrases was, I don't even remember where it came from. I got it from something else. It's the revolution of lowered expectations. And I find that is, I keep coming back to, it's an the individualistic response is always interesting in any situation. And I see fear and I see expectation. And usually it's not always, but those are the ones that at first pique my gaze. And it's, what are you expecting? What are you putting on? Like, it's all about your perspective. There is no reality. There's no truth, in a science perspective. And, but it's all about you. It's your thing. So, and a lot of the hesitancy and a lot of the friction comes from, fear and unrealistic expectations, or you're not doing the introspection kind of thing. And there's a lack of love and honor, which are the opposite sides of that spectrum. So it's all these personal things. And just the joke of life is that every human being has to go through this. And though we can pass technical knowledge, we can't seem to pass, spiritual knowledge. And maybe we can. I don't know. I'm an absurdist. So this all the fact that it makes no sense, it makes me feel better. So,
Paul, it kind of brings to mind the thing you talked about several times. You brought this up, that the fall of the Soviet Union precipitated a change in the nature of the political structure in America. That there was no longer this boogeyman of communism to be afraid of, and that's what had held the Cold War had held us together more or less. There were people who, were on various sides about it. But when you remove that element, suddenly it's, well, now what do we do? What's, who are we? So now it's socialists we're against, or it's.
Well, this was Rising kind of put this together for me. Was it moved to briefly the war on terror and Islamic fundamentalists and, Muslims in general. But that didn't catch too much. There was of course 9/11, and that would have happened no matter what ethnic group we claimed responsibility for that. But it had a little bit of staying power, but not much. That transition just didn't work. Maybe we need a couple more 100 years of Muslim slavery for that to work. I have no idea. But the real undercurrent, what Rising was talking about, is now the enemy is each other.
Oh yeah.
That's it. If you take a step outside of America and look at America, you can see them weaponizing each other, just like we weaponized against communists. Nobody went to Russia. Nobody understood communism, but it was this existential threat. Nobody, I don't go to a evangelical church out in Alabama, but it's an existential threat. This is the amount of times they kind of put it on that lens of, you need, for sensationalism to work, you need an enemy, you need an other.
Right.
And the best other now is the other side of the political spectrum. It's the left or the right. And now we are each other's enemies. Mm-hmm. And I don't see how that can be replaced. I mean, I do kind of with the socialist populist revolution or whatever, yay. But it really, I don't see it being like, that's a tough enemy to usurp.
Yeah. You made me think of this. I was thinking a quote from, the Fukushima, Francis Fukushima, the end of history. History's all done now, when the Soviet Union collapsed. And he wrote, he popped up the other day and was like, whoop, I was wrong.
It kept going.
History. So
oh my goodness.
What to do. We got this thing. Yeah, it's an interesting, interesting problem and how to resolve it. It escapes me. I mean, I don't want to be having either the real extreme right or left telling me what to do.
Right.
I'm pretty much that kind of guy. You just leave me alone.
The Muslim, trying to get the Muslim, just for lack of a better word, I'm just gonna say Muslim, as an enemy, whatever. It worked for a minute with 9/11 because there's this general enemy, whatever, and it worked just like traditionally that tactic works before.
Yeah.
But with the video camera, and I can see a live feed, like especially with the Israel news now, if I'm watching a live feed of someone being a demonstrable asshole to another human being, and these aren't the soldiers, these are the citizens yelling, and I can't help but think of the movies about the Nazi citizens yelling at the Jews, and now the Jews are yelling at the Palestinians, and but I'm seeing this in real time, unedited. If you get a chance to edit it, if you get a chance to spin it, you can control me. But if I can see the raw feed, I'm like, what the hell is this? It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And the propaganda for a minute.
It's amazing how much the fake stuff is taken over. The whole all of the oath seekers and Q, and they don't have anything to really actually offer up except fear.
Yeah.
And worried about some mystical, non-existent things that they can't even themselves define, or describe. But it's going to come in and take over everybody and turn all the children into sex slaves. And I mean,
when I see the raw video of it, though, not like it they don't have a chance to put that spin on there. And I'm not saying they can't put it on later.
Well, maybe they do and maybe they don't. I would compare that to what they've done with voice editing in comedy.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
Where the first time I heard it was when Cher did a concert, and they actually modulate her voice through the microphone, so you never hear her actual voice. Well, if you saw Forrest Gump years ago, it was fairly easy to tell that he wasn't actually there with Lyndon Johnson shaking hands.
Right.
It's much more sophisticated. You can't tell. I mean,
yeah. Well, these days too, you've got the whole thing of, there's some, and I can't remember off the top of my head, where I'm like, oh, okay, this is a crowdsourced video, kind of like this is a thing. And then I find out later that person was bought off by the CIA. And you're like, I thought he was a leftist. Nope. This other thing of this reporter is like, oh, well, the DSA, right? And you're like, this whole thing about the DSA, it's really the more I never looked into it. I just assumed it was one of the good guys, right? And it turns out the more and more people look into it, it's a front for the Democratic establishment. It's not what it claims to be. And the members of the DSA started, they were in the same mindset of oh no, we're on the good team and this, and then you're like, wait, who's the leadership of the DSA? Oh wait, we don't know. Who can I call? Where's the direct? Oh wait, who? Okay, why didn't we ask this before? Who are these people?
Well, Paul, I was going to point this out later, but now that you brought it up, there was an article that I read yesterday about the head of Black Lives Matter, who has now resigned after revelations that she skimmed off millions of dollars from the organization.
Yeah.
Several months ago, you may recall in one of our men's group meetings, I made the statement that I don't support the Black Lives Matter organization. And I tried to clarify that I support, fairness, equality, justice for everybody. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this particular organization that goes under Black Lives Matter and has is a corporation or whatever the hell they are. I don't know who they are, so I'm not going to send them money because I don't know who they are. And got criticized because, oh well, you're not supporting the efforts of Black people to gain justice. And no, I'm not supporting that damned organization. I don't know who they are. They're selling signs and T-shirts and things, but nobody's standing up and saying, "Hey, it's me," and I'm, So
yeah,
it is.
I had the same thing with BDS. This came about a year or two ago, and I learned there were two BDS movements. There was the Americanized one or whatever, and this was like your right to boycott and protest is very American. Yay, we all agree. And then there's the Palestinian BDS, which 2 out of the 3 things they wanted were really good, and one of them was really bad. And I'm like, it was that whole thing of like, if you had one state, there's more Palestinians, so they'll just make it an ethno state for Palestinians against it's the whole thing. And but the fact that there were 2 different movements, and you could be conflated, and that nobody said anything, it was just no. This is my virtue signaling, and I'm like, guys, all right, okay. Well, you didn't want to actually do anything, so all right, go wear your T-shirt.
Yeah. Whatever you do, don't say anything that can be checked later.
Right.
Well,
this is a post-truth world.
Post-truth world all the way around, guys.
Well, while I don't support literal interpretations of the Bible, I think on occasion there are interesting parallels in the Bible. And when you read the story of the Tower of Babel, the point of it was when people don't have a common language, they can't communicate. And one of the things that's happening now is we are losing our common language. What is racism? What is white supremacy? What do these things mean? And people have different notions and different ideas, and there's no authority. And I think now, Paul, my experience here was within the Catholic upbringing, and I don't know whether there was a parallel and equivalent kind of structure for everybody else. But in the Catholic Church, you could have any kind of opinion about whatever you wanted. But if the Pope said, this is it, then you're supposed to follow his direction. That was it, the ultimate authority. And they even attributed infallibility to him on matters of faith and morals. That, we don't proclaim things that what they said ex cathedra, from the chair. We don't do that often, but when we do, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And that was a faulty system, but it at least gave a definition, it gave a benchmark that you could debate about. And we don't have too many of those anymore. We don't have, here's what we can agree on, and now let's see where we disagree. We disagree on everything, so we have no commonality. We have nothing that ties us together. We try to do it with the U.S. Constitution, but I've always said that America is a nation united on a common misunderstanding. That we understand the Constitution in different ways, and so we look to the Supreme Court as the arbiter. But now what we want to do is rearrange the court so they do what we want them to do. We don't attribute the authority to them. The authority is in the guy that we select, who's going to pack the court with the people we want.
Yeah, I think you nailed it a little closer there. It's just being usurped. Like when you give up, American is active citizenship, right? Mm-hmm. And if you are not active in your citizenship, then you give it up.
Yeah.
And that's the core that's running through all that, like the packing of the courts. And that's political, tactical, oligarchical, tactical crap. It's going to happen regardless. But it's this lack of our ethos has been damaged. If we ever had one, I'm assuming we did. I'm assuming we still do. But yeah, maybe you can clarify that a bit.
Well, yeah, and what I've been thinking about through this while we were talking about this is I think, well, in terms of on a global level, there's, as you say, the Catholics who have the guy who's tag you're it and everything else. And, the folks who live in the Himalayas, they got the Dalai Lama and he's the authority of theirs. And you kind of go, well, what do we have with us? Oh, we know the guy that writes it all down for us. There's two of them that write it all down for us that we should follow. One of them is the Jews, who, when a book is copied, it must be copied exactly the same every time so that it's consistent, even if you don't agree with it. This is what the book says. And the other one are the Baha'is, who have their guy wrote it all down. Which most people don't know about the Baha'is too much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's it. Those are the way they do it. You write it down. Now we are in a position where you can write everything down today, and tomorrow you can turn it into cheese.
I have an interesting thought on that. I was thinking about one of my most random thoughts was like, if I were to rewrite the Bible and take all the good things out of the Bible and all the other texts and whatever, all the things that are helpful and positive, not the listings of kings and whatever, all that crap, and all the parables, and I would update them all to a modern perspective. And, me being an atheist, but still appreciating religion, I go a different direction. But in general, like say I redid it so it was modern and people today could understand it, it could be useful, all the wonderful parables and stories and morals and things like that. They redid it perfectly and I'm the best writer in the world. Would it still be as powerful as the Bible? And I'm going to mess this up, but my answer is no. Like, even if the book is demonstrably better for me in a personal life, like I can use it better, it has none of that legacy but legacy stuff. Like, people take the Bible and even people who don't believe in the Bible don't just toss it out a window. They take it and they treat it respectfully, even if they completely disagree with everything. If I were to make a new Bible that was actually good and useful, it still wouldn't be as powerful. So what is that sense that makes us do that? Like, why do I attribute so much power to it when I've read a lot of it a long time ago at once and then stopped? Like, it's not a part. What is that thing? Why do I make it holy? What makes it holy?
Well, one of the things it does do is it empowers the people who don't even tell you that I have the answer.
Yeah, but why do I give it so much credence?
Well, because there's Donald Trump up there telling you what it is. That's the answer.
Yeah.
The whole thing. I mean, it doesn't make any difference if it's just Donald or if it's the Pope or if it's the Baha'is. There's one guy usually. Maybe there's 4 or 5 guys. Maybe Saudi's got a few things in here. They're the ones saying, okay, this is what it is. And they'd always disagree with the next batch or the guys before them. So everybody wants to be treated as the gospel bearer, if you will. And here it is. I've got the gospel. And it doesn't matter whether or not you understand what it is that it says, as long as somebody does who then tells you what to do. And so everybody's, always think about when they get into this question and what makes people obey things from religious positions or whatever it might be. I think of Jim Jones in Jonestown. How do you account for somebody who basically tells everybody that follow him to go out and die now with poison? This is what you got to do in order to be that. I mean, that blew my brains out. I thought, what in the hell? What makes somebody do such a thing? Even regardless of whether or not what makes it. So why does that guy decide to tell everybody to do that and to one of those people obey him? I mean, and you think, well, it's consistent throughout culture that things like that happen. in Western culture, where we decide that, oh, these people over here are wrong, and we're gonna kill them all. That's how we'll solve our problems. We'll kill everybody that believes in that, and then that will leave us with the answer, even if it's not the answer.
Mm.
I mean,
sounds messy.
Yeah, so, it was very messy. I remember, watching when the first guy stepped off the plane out there and looked out, and there's all these people laying in the grass, bloated up. And I thought, God, really, I mean, it had a very visceral impact when I saw that all this time later, and it still does. I can't look at that sequence, nor can I look at the one where what's his name down in Wichita or Waco. The great Dan Branch Davidians, right? With their gun. And yeah, we could have that. And what's Donald Trump's weakness is that he never figured out he had to be a religious person in order to get everybody to do what he says.
Yeah. I saw, to break it up a bit, yesterday I saw a lady at the megaphone on my corner yelling God at people. And of course, I didn't engage because they're there for a different reason. They're not there to engage. It's not like she was on the corner offering hugs.
Yeah.
That would be something. I'm like, oh, you're moved by God and you want to spread love. I'll take a hug. No, she was yelling God at people. And playing in my mind, I'm like, there was no conversation that would break through anything, because she actually believed that, she was doing it. She was being a bully, and people be a bully for different reasons. And sometimes they're not even aware of it. And I doubt there was anything that would make her realize that if you took the word God out, you look like you would call somebody doing what you're doing who's not talking about God a crazy person. But you don't think you're being crazy because you have this excuse. And like there was no cycling through my mind. I could not think of a situation where she didn't think she was absolutely correct in doing it. And therefore, there was no way that she would understand anything I'm talking about. She's blinded by her own. It's not a truth. It's what bullies do. She's blinded by her own self-importance and rage, yelling, God loves you in a very angry way.
But it's interesting comparing, Paul, what you were talking about with someone like Jim Jones. Would he have likely been one of those people who drank the Kool-Aid if someone else had assumed his position? In other words, he just another person like all the other people in his group. It's just that for whatever reason he came to a position of authority. I think there's a similarity in this notion that I'm not satisfied and I'm not confident in my own reality, that I don't have the strength of character to say, here I am and I'm a person with faults and I have some strengths and weaknesses and so forth, and I'm trying to do the best I can. No, it's something's wrong. Somebody's picking on me. Somebody's doing something to me, and I got to have some solution for it. And for his followers, it was, oh, Jim's going to do it. And for Jim, it was, well, I've got to do it. But it was responding to the same notion, but one being to become the leader and the other one to become the follower. And I find that in so many areas, that's one of the reasons that I became disaffected from the Catholic Church, is because I went through the process. I did the whole number. I mean, I went through education and I got involved in the ministry and all of that stuff. And in the end, it reminded me of an old joke. I won't tell you the whole joke, but basically it's the guy going to the whorehouse and he sees a sign that says deposit 25 cents. He goes through a door. There's another sign that says deposit $1, et cetera, until he's up to $100. And when he puts $100 in, he opens up the door, he's out in an alley by himself. And there's a sign that says, you just got screwed. Like you've been through the process, you bought into it all the way. And when you get through it, you realize there wasn't anything there. There wasn't really anything there except the act of selling this thing.
Yeah. You can say the same thing about cable news.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
The reality of cable news is they might have this story or that story, but they're always going to have those commercials. Commercials will take up a certain amount of time, and that's for sure. So the raison d'etre for it is to make money or to gain power, and the people who do it for the same reason that the people who follow it do, and that's why.
I think they do it for different reasons, though. Like one is a wolf and the other's a sheep, and so the wolf is doing wolf things for wolf reasons. Like he would not have taken the Kool-Aid if someone else's Kool-Aid. No, he's a wolf being wolfy. That's it.
Well,
like he is not there for the same reasons.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I don't know. My theory is it's a slightly different response to the same stimulus. And the stimulus I don't understand, and I'm afraid, and somebody's out to get me, and I got to do something. It's
Well,
the wolf isn't afraid. The wolf gets pleasure out of dominance. So they're not out of fear. Like maybe that comes from insecurity and all that whatever stuff, but they're not drenched in fear in that manner. They're drenched in lust for power and dominance.
Well,
No.
Maybe not. I don't claim to be inside the head of a wolf, but I'd say a lot of fear there too. But any rate, I think the thing that's at the heart of a lot of the lack of trust that we have is that we don't have any strong common institutions. We've lost the churches, we've lost government, we've lost education, and now people are denying science and everything else. Anytime something elevates to a position of claiming authority, we want to shoot it. And that means the loss of a common understanding. And it was one thing for me to grow up in the church and hear the dogma and disagree with it. It's another thing for you or for my grandchildren to not have any dogma expressed to them whatsoever. There's nobody tells them what the truth is because no one dares to say it's the truth. That's the irony behind the title I've given this little conversation. The truth is it's everybody has their truth, so I tell you what my truth is and you tell me what your truth is, but we don't have to agree on any common truth. And in fact, we're not inclined to. Interesting.
Everybody likes that. I'm curious to wonder about whether or not, what will happen to this bunch of bipeds down on this planet when the actual aliens roll in and say, okay, we're here, and now you're going to do what we tell you, and because of course they have all this great technology. Yeah. I mean, we get to this point somewhere along the way. It's like, does the society just simply reach a point of not being able to resolve things, and so we just self-destroy? And wipe us out. All of us are going to go. We're going to drop the nuke on the whole damn place, just because we haven't been able to solve it with any of our great insights or any solution or technology. None of that.
Yeah. Well, it's like sometimes my response to the machine that's not working is to smash it.
Smash it, yeah. Just hit real good. Now, I like to think that we're repeating history a lot, but there's one big difference. We've always had these systems of control, they've always evolved and morphed and adapted. And we've always had our internal versus like all the common crap. But the big difference between now and the rest of human history is basically it's modern connection. So it's not only transportation and globalism, but also the internet and things like that. So we just didn't have those before. And so we're still in our bare infancy of this too. So this is a growing pain. So that's why it's really hard to see. And people aren't going to be able to truly verbalize it until several generations from now, looking back on the now, so the last 100 years of, I'm talking about like the differences, the internet basically is what this argument is. And it shows the same things. But now we're aware that there are same things. Like it shows the same awfulness of human history and all the jazz, but we're aware of it. Now, this is the same thing of like how social, what is really fascinating and that we can almost see in real time. We really can't, but we can trick ourselves to almost see it. Of like, kind of like the Bernie Sanders was a good example of, everybody thought that was foolish or stupid or whatever until they heard everybody else talk about it. And then on a dime, it felt, they were like, oh no, okay. And then it moved from impossible and stupid to, yeah, that's what we want, because we just recognized that we weren't alone. And as the world recognized, this was the Arab Spring was a better example, but I have less information on that. But we just recognized that we're not alone. Now, this is still, that's still just 20 years basically compared to 10,000. So it'll take a minute, but there has been a fundamental change.
Yeah.
Like humanity was just not able to do the things that we are able to do now.
Yeah.
It's never happened before.
A good comparison might be the relationship between Gutenberg and Martin. That once you have Bibles printed and printed in a language that people speak, you've taken the power away from the people who only spoke Latin and only had the sacred book that was handwritten and only a few access to it. Now suddenly it appears in German and English and French and so forth, and a middle-class person can get a hold of a copy. Well, that's the fodder for the revolution. You couldn't have Reformation without the publication of the Bible. So likewise with the internet, we couldn't have Black Lives Matter. We couldn't have the MAGA movement. We couldn't have a lot of things. Arab Spring is one of them, without the internet. So I think you're onto something, that this is the infancy of this. And one of the things that I think is critical right now is that everyone understands the media and they understand, you know, what your role is and what your relationship is.